Okay, hi class. So I apologize for the confusion there. That's never happened to me before, and I had to work with the university because there is an umbrella. So we should be allowed to watch whatever videos we want, but since we're going through YouTube, it makes it more complicated. So here we go again. We're going to start this all over. We left off in our last, sort of had a week off there, so everybody will get their weekly points because that through no fault of your own, we were unable to participate last week. I do hope you were able to at least get, oops, sorry. I do hope you were able to at least get your papers and caught up on any reflections and whatnot that you need to get caught up on. So moving forward with our class and into ballet history, we left off our last lecture with the foundations of dance and looking at archaic dance and how it started out as a celebration, maybe ritual or religious, into social dancing, and really what ballet came out of the social dance. So we're going to go to our PowerPoint here, and remember that the PowerPoints are posted under the document section of Notebowl, so you can go through if you want to read them without me talking, then we can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and get started here. All right, we have to go back. We're going to go all the way back to Roman civilization, okay? So we just left off with the Greeks, and then the Romans take over. As the Romans conquered the Greeks and many other countries across, whoa. Where did everything go? There it is. All right. So this is the downfall of having an online class, is that sometimes things don't work out the way you want them to, but we'll just look at this little mini slide until my thing stops scrolling around. All right, so Roman civilization, okay. Okay, we're gonna try this again. Ugh. Oh, that's just awesome. Okay, class, just hold on. I don't want to like have to start all over. So let's see. I think I can just do this. Maybe. Well, I hope everybody had a good weekend. I had an interesting weekend because in the Tucson Unified School District, people don't take off President's Day, but you get taken off for rodeo days. So my kids have been home all weekend, which sort of also debilitated me from trying to do this lecture again over the weekend. All right, so let's, fingers crossed here, moving down. We did all this. So now the kids are back at school and my computer doesn't work. It's that Minecraft, I swear. Minecraft takes over my life. Okay. Here we go. Okay, thanks for hanging in there, class. So Roman civilization was an imperial power that conquered much of Western civilization. Rome did allow for arts and music of foreign countries to be assimilated under their rule. They were particularly fond of the amphitheater, the Greek amphitheater, to make it larger and more majestic with the Roman Colosseum. And you can see here that looks very similar to our football coliseums. The Roman civilization was very much obsessed with entertainment, much like our culture is today. And ultimately, I believe that contributed to its demise, because through the obsession with entertainment, some of their much needed rule and tenacity was overlooked. So as we look at Rome's entertainment, some of the things that they brought to the table as far as theater goes were the circus, comedy, exotic displays, okay, and we have the slight unfortunates of being eaten by lions. However, the big thing that the Romans brought to the table was slapstick comedy. So what they did, and that's sort of where the clowns out of the circus entertainment and all this comes back from a very ancient tradition in Rome. And so the slapstick, you can see this this little character here wearing a mask, and there's his stick, and they would do things sort of like Three Musketeers, like go around and, you know, trip somebody behind the knees and they fall over and everybody starts laughing. And that's when we came up with slapstick comedy. And so it was the Romans really that brought this into the theater. However, ballet and other dance forms started to kind of incorporate this into what, it's all related. They all start incorporating into each other to make what we know today as theater dance. And then as the fall of the Roman Empire, we have the Crusades and the Dark Ages, okay? And the Dark Ages were a particularly dark time. That's the brand Dark Ages, and part of that was the disease being spread. The Crusades, there was a lot of violence and fighting. And during that time, people did use dance in different ways, and part of that was dance mania, which sounds sort of funny right now, but people actually would get together and have these sort of hysterical type dancing in order to, some people believed that it would get rid of the toxins of the Black Plague, or they would get into like a trance-like, sort of trance dancing, and that would help them with some of the trials and tribulations of this time. Tarantism was a dance that came out of Italy, and it was based on a spider bite, and so we're not quite sure whether that's a sharp, jerky, has roots, some folk dancing in there. We're not quite sure whether that was to get rid of, again, to dance out, sweat out those toxins, or if that's actually what the venom made people do, is sort of get twitchy. So as the Roman Empire is falling and Christianity is taking its hold throughout Western civilization, some of the things that are coming up and back up as they get control of, the Black Plague gets under control and some of the political instabilities get under control. We have the rise of the city-state. So we have these great places with populations that haven't been seen before in our Western civilizations. People are moving away from the villages and coming into the city-state. We also have a rebirth of artistic ideas. And so we have this time of like gathering in, recovering, healing. The Christianity religion is taking a stronghold, and people are trying to, I don't know, I guess it's sort of that Apollonian and Dionysian effect. So we have the Apollonian effect. The Greek got very Apollonian with their beautiful structures and their dances and their artwork. And then with the Romans conquering them, it got sort of Dionysian. And as the fall of the Roman Empire came, it's that Dionysian, crazy, chaotic forces come in. And the swing of the pendulum is to go back to a more controlled and ordered ideal. And so that's where we're at right now in the 1500s. Now, people are still doing court dances in the courts. With the city-state rise, there was also a rise in the chivalry and in court dancing in taking those village dances, which were once folk dances, and making them into these, they slowed down the music and made the steps more precise. And and they were the court dances. And at that time, it was very much a show of power and intelligence and strength if you were a good court dancer. And all the court dancers were men. So you have all these men showing off their prowess, and if they could do the minuet without, or a jig without falling down, then they were particularly gifted. So then we have, and this was originated out of the courts in Italy, and this leads us into our first real choreographed ballet in 1581. So this was produced and commissioned by Catherine de' Medici. The Medicis were a very strong and prominent family that survived the chaos and the Black Plague and the fall of the Roman Empire, and they came into rebuilding Italy and worked very closely with the papacy during the time. So it was a very powerful family in Italy. And so she was celebrating the marriage of her niece to Henry IV of France. And she went to France and basically imported a lot of this art and court dancing and these ideas. And she came to France and said, well, we need to do this here. And so she also did this. She was just a trendsetter, but she also did this as a political show of strength for Italy, coming in and bringing in the beautiful Italian influences. So she commissioned Balthazar de Beaujolais, and I know Mr. Clauser has it written different ways in the text, so you may have read it slightly different. This most recent version, Balthazar with a Z, and then de Beaujolais was an Italian dancing master. And so she saw him and she said, okay, I'm going to pay you to make the most beautiful ballet to show Italians' presence politically and aesthetically in France during this marriage. And so he did it, and the subject matter was mythological. It was intended to flatter the French and the visiting nobilities, but at the same time remind all the guests that the Medicis of Florence and Italy still controlled Europe and the papacy. And of course, this dance was performed by the men of the court. The women of that day were still very much meant to keep their place. They were not allowed to be on stage and making such show of themselves. Okay, so we have the ballet. This is what evolved after that first ballet de la comique. We have the ballet de cour. The ballet de cour, again, were men dancing on stage. The steps, of course, did come from the folk dances, similar to the Greek folk dancing that we watched a couple weeks ago. And they had very elaborate costumes. And you can see in these pictures, the headpieces were extremely elaborate, and it looks like they're actually wearing like tutu type things that would be difficult to do that quick, fancy jumping footwork. And so because of the elaborate costumes, the dancing had to be slowed down and more elegant. There wasn't any bouncing allowed, or their headpieces would fall off. Even the female roles were played by boys, cross-dressing essentially at the time. You can see that they had to have a very erect posture, or their headpieces would fall off. And so it was that erect posture, the slowing down of the movement, and the elegance is what the ballet de cour started to move in this direction. And this leads us to the dancing king, Louis XIV. And Louis XIV was very involved in dance. He took a dance class every single day. He was very proud of his agility and his dancing ability. And at the time, much like how we see men who have six-pack abs, and they show that off in, I don't know, videos and magazines. At that time, it was men to have calf muscles. So you can see here, he always, in all of his pictures, if you want to Google and look at some pictures of Louis XIV, it's sort of funny. He's always showing off this calf muscle. And so that, was a very impressive physical quality that he had. And accordingly, he had to rotate his legs outward in some of the steps, because his calves were so big that they would get in the way. And so you sort of start to see some of the beginnings of turnout. So In 1661, he founded the first dancing school in the world, the Académie Royale des Danses. And because this was an institution established primarily to teaching dance and preserving the art of dance, they also had to codify or name some of the dance steps to make it easier to translate the information and continue this sort of school. If you don't have a word, it would be harder to just teach a movement without giving it a name. So that's why he appointed Pierre Beauchamp to help codify these steps. And that is why ballet terminology is in the French language and not in Italian. Okay, and there's a little more information on here. Just talks a little bit about how he defined the 5 basic positions of the feet, which we looked at some of the positions and body facings in the video a week and a half ago. And that's what made it possible to choreograph increasingly intricate movements. So with that, I would like to go ahead and show a video of what dancing during that time would look like. There he is, showing off the calf muscle. Notice the erect posture. All right, so you see a little taste of what the dancing in the ballet de corps and what the dancing of the only men dancers looked like at the time. So let's go back to our PowerPoint here. So as the ballet became more popular and was increasingly powerful in the courts and as then there was an official school made and more people were being trained in this art of ballet, the women said, hey, we want to be involved too. And so daring unnamed women decided that they would dress up like men so then they could go into the comedies and the ballets to dress up like women. So there were women dressing like men so that then they would be accepted to go dance on stage and play potentially a female. So it's sort of funny, but as people began to notice that there were women dressing like men to then play women, and then at the end of the 17th century, when the masks began to disappear, they took off the masks and wanted to show more human faces. They allowed some women to come onto the stage. So Madame La Fontaine was the first female dancer to appear on the roster of the Paris Opera, and that was at the end of the 1600s, early 1700s. And then we had Francois Prévost, who also was one of the pioneers of women on stage and became a teacher of these next 2 dancers, Marie Camargo and Marie Sallet. Marie Camargo decided that she was a very good jumper and that she's also said to have invented the 90-degree turnout, so she turned out her feet as much as possible so that she could show off her jumps even more. And then she shortened her ballet skirt to prove that her virtuosity was as equal to that of her male colleagues. And that's very important because at the time, if women were still even allowed on stage, they were still completely covered. Very different than what you see today, even on the U of A campus. So at that time, it was a very daring thing to do. And that brings us into 18th century ballet d'action. So as we are moving into the 18th century, we have gone from all men dancing very slow, erect, elegant, Baroque musically inspired ballet to then allowing women on stage and doing more advanced jumps. And now Pierre Georges Noverre, so he advocated that we take all the masks off and that we make the characters more suitable to who they're portraying. So it was going to be less about these mythical characters and bringing people and humans onto stage. And then by the end of 1786, that brings us to La Fille Mal Gardée, and that really means the young woman acting badly or needing to be guarded with bad guardianship. So she goes, so this is about a young woman in a village who falls in love, and they basically get locked in a closet for a minute together, but because of that moment together in the closet, then they have to get married because, you know, she would be damaged goods at that point. And so it's showing, it's the reason why this is significant in ballet history is that La Fille Mal Gardée was the first ballet to show dancers, male and female, acting like male and female humans in sort of an everyday life, okay, and dancing about this sort of everyday commonality, this common village type life. And so we're going to watch a little section. This is the one that got copyrighted last week and caused all those problems. But I got the Houston Ballet, who doesn't have a copyright. So we're going to watch a little section from this ballet. So it's showing, so we see these village people and doing very village type dancing. And that's a man dressed like a woman. All right, again, resembling some of the folk dancing, okay? Now back to our PowerPoint. So you can see a little bit, oops. Oh, Anna Pavlova. Okay, we'll get to that later. Back to our PowerPoint. So that's our first ballet showing real people without masks on stage. Okay. Then when mind you, when this was originally done, there were no point shoes yet. So they did not have point shoes. They probably really just had soft slippers and clogs. The clog dance is a very old dance. It obviously stems from folk dancing. So when this first was done in 1786, there were no point shoes. But it is a ballet that is still re-choreographed, or I mean restaged every day. And you can see it in some mainstream companies like San Francisco Ballet or American Ballet Theater. So now we have the women on the rise to point and prominence. So during the French Revolution, many dancers and choreographers left Paris Opera to perform in England and other parts of Europe. So for a good 250 years, Paris really was the mainstay and the the grounds for all ballet that was really happening. And then, you know, as our technology is more rapid, I mean, today it's even faster, it begins to spread, okay? So now it's going to other parts of Europe. And one of these immigrants was a man named Charles Didelot. I can't remember how to pronounce it, but he introduced the concept of a flying machine at a production in Lyons in 1794 and presented it in London in 1796. And so this contraption allowed dancers to stand briefly on their toes before being whisked upward, creating the illusion of lightness. So as they portrayed ethereal and unreal characters in classical ballets. So they've taken their masks off in 1786, but they still wanted to have some of these ethereal and fairy-like characters in ballet. So that happened in 1796, and that sort of spurred this whole desire to have this upliftedness, this lightness, this sort of flying idea. So in 1832, Marie Taglioni was the first woman to dance on point in La Sylphide, and that was choreographed by her father and teacher, Filippo Taglioni. And Taglioni, so you can see in this photo here, she has a slightly bent elbow here. She was a very tall woman with very long limbs, and she was very thin, and her father felt like that was sort of unbecoming for a woman in ballet those days. And so to make her arms look less long, he incorporated this idea of bending at the elbows. And she was a very obedient and a very good dancer. She's the one who first danced on point, and we're going to watch a clip of La Sylphide so you can get an idea of what this sort of time in ballet looked like. Again, the costumes you will always see, this is known as the Romantic era, the costumes always have long white dresses. And because she was the pioneer of point shoes and she did this beautiful ballet that is also still restaged today, women and ballerinas all over the country and world began to copy her style, that bent, soft arms and the long white costumes. So here's a little bit of La Sylphide. She's a fairy, she's a sylph that only he can see. Notice her bent arms, long tutu. Soft arms. All right, so you get the idea. So we're going to switch PowerPoints now. So I think we're just going to end there today with the beginning of the rise of women to prominence in point shoes. And we will start part 2 of the ballet will happen tomorrow. It'll probably be afternoon. So I don't think, let's see, go back to here. Wait. Stop screen share now. Let's see if anybody has any questions. Okay, well, I hope that that was somewhat informative for you, and I will do part 2 tomorrow. And I'll try to get it done. I'm thinking of my kids' schedule right now. It's really hard to do these online lectures when they're running around. So I'll do it tomorrow at 8:30, 8:35, 8:40 tomorrow morning will be part 2, and then we'll be done with ballet and on to modern. So I hope that you're enjoying the nice looking outside right now, the nice cool weather. It's probably going to be the last of it for a long time. And again, I'm only an email or a phone call, or we can meet in person away. Have a great day.